Welcome back, guys. Hope this finds you well in 2024. A top executive and financial strategist put out a top 10 potential surprises for 2024. So I'm going to go over the top 10. His full report, actually like 49 pages long, pretty long, but it's top 10, super interesting. And I venture to say that these bankers, especially at a place like JPMorgan, they are privy to some information that the common man, the commoner, may not have access to. So the investor and financial strategist with JPMorgan, Michael Sembalist, compiled this list of top 10 surprises, and he's got some pretty wild surprises that he thinks might happen. Does he know something? Does he have insider information? Maybe he does. JPMorgan is huge. Just in Q3 of last year, they reported revenue close to $40 billion. And of course, banking, Wall Street, and their connection to Washington, D.C., well, these people are essentially, they're probably aware of a lot of stuff. So let's hear what this guy has to say. Now, it's kind of funny that he titled this whole report Pillow Talk. At 49 pages, it's very thorough and covers a lot of topics. It includes speculations as to the value of the dollar, as well as even stuff dealing with Ukraine. And this report covers a wide range of topics, from anti-obesity drugs to FTC lawsuits, DOJ lawsuits, food category consumption, to, of course, the valuation of the dollar. And of course, some information you have to take with a grain of salt, or at least you kind of have to interpret it in a certain way because, well, they have to shape the data to conform to a certain angle, let's put it that way. For example, the metrics they use for inflation rate, which they claim has declined in the Western world, anywhere from Sweden to Europe, Norway, Canada, Switzerland, that all of them are experiencing declines in inflation rate. I personally have not seen any decline in inflation at all, but it could just be me. So it's a very interesting report. And he writes that his list of top 10 surprises coming for 2024, potential surprises, is in honor of Byron Vien, a famous market strategist that used to compile these lists, and he did it for over 30 years. Okay, so for number one, he says that the US dollar will remain stable. He argues that despite all the arguments about the weaponization of the US dollar via the US sanctions, that the US dollar will trade plus or minus 7% from where it began in 2024. His prediction, adding furthermore that the dollar will retain roughly 50% share of global trading invoicing, i.e. will remain the global reserve currency, which of course is very good for here in the US. Okay, so number two, he predicts that the DOJ and the FTC are going to win a major antitrust case, where the Department of Justice and the Federal Trade Commission, they currently have huge antitrust cases against Google, Amazon, Meta. And what are these cases about? Well, it's about them monopolizing. So it's probably a very good thing that they're being looked at. Number three, he predicts that President Biden is going to withdraw sometime between Super Tuesday and the November election, which is crazy. That the president is going to cite health concern and that he's going to pass the torch to a candidate named by the DNC. He says in the report that the president has a very low approval rating, claiming that the approval rating is low for a president with a supposed 10% job creation since inauguration. But rightfully so, he points out that this 10% job creation is of course a byproduct of post-C-19 and the reopening of the US economy, which anyone with common sense can figure that out. He provides a nice chart on the presidential approval ratings to the payroll growth since inauguration, i.e. job creation. And as you can see, the approval rating is pretty darn low. It's the lowest of them all. And number four, he says there's a backlash coming against driverless cars, saying that in the few places they're being tested in the real world, such as San Francisco, that these vehicles have blocked ambulances on the way to the hospital, that they've hampered emergency responders, that they've caused accidents, that they've actually increased congestion, and even run over pedestrians, saying that these issues have been so bad that it's even caused the Cruise CEO to resign, probably because they ran over someone. On top of that, the company Waymo has added tech to reportedly allow firefighters to take over control of those vehicles, which is kind of a smart move. He says that autonomous vehicle technology stocks called LiDAR have collapsed by 85% from its peak, and he doesn't see it coming back. No rebound. He also says that a possible backlash is coming from citizens who believe that convenience for some actually results in dangers for others. highlighting the NHTSA investigations into Tesla's so-called self-driving tech, the Tesla autopilot that has led to a series of crashes, saying that the methods used by Tesla can lead to foreseeable misuse. Also pointing out that last month, Tesla actually issued a recall of 2 million vehicles just to update the software on autopilot just to require greater driver compliance, which of course is a smart move for everyone on the road. With a report providing a stock basket on LiDAR, the autonomous driving tech. Number 5, he says that broadly syndicated loan losses rise above private credit losses for the first time, saying that historically there hasn't been much difference in the respective losses. Chart provided, essentially saying that after a decade of easy money, low interest loans, that this could change. A syndicated loan can be offered by a group of lenders, offering huge amounts of money, where the borrower can be a corporation, a large project, or even a sovereign government. So I think those losses increasing over private credit loans, so that's a pretty interesting one, and of course it can have a ripple effect. Number 6, he says that the Argentinian dollarization will fail if implemented. The financial executive at JPMorgan says that he is suspicious that the new Argentinian president Milei needs 2/3 majority to pass a constitutional reform to dollarize. Needs 2/3 to pass constitutional reforms required for dollarization. He says that Argentina would need substantial foreign exchange reserves and a much higher savings rate to even try. That even if implemented, that it would fail. Very interesting for someone at JPMorgan to be saying that. Number 7, he claims that Russia and Ukraine, well, no ceasefire, it's just going to drag on. There's that. But he does say that US financial support will continue after the L's and the R's agree on funding more US border security. Funny enough, he provides a chart for US Customs and Border Protection enforcement and a chart highlighting the difference between the US and the European defense spending. Pretty big difference. So he claims in the report that all the problems in Europe is going to push Europe to spend 2% of its GDP on defense. That even though it agreed to do this back in 2006, it has never done so. That instead it relies on the world police. With number 8 saying that despite US clouds over regional banks, that their stocks will do well in 2024 with stable or rising prices to book value. With the report highlighting unprecedented rescues by the Fed and the FDIC. He points out that when Silicon Valley Bank failed, that the depositors were bailed out despite it being a venture capital piggy bank. Pretty interesting. Pointing out that the top 10 depositors had $13 billion with the bank, and all of them were bailed out despite having a history of losses imposed on uninsured depositors in FDIC resolutions. Pretty interesting. So really no surprise there, banks that fail will be bailed out. Too big to fail. Pretty annoying. With number 9 saying that due to retirement of dispatchable power generation such as nuclear, coal, gas, and underinvestment in pipelines, gas storage, and winterization, that major US cities will face electrical power outages. Huge. Not only that, but they may face also natural gas outages, which is much worse. Saying that the North American Electricity Reliability Association, releasing their 2023 risk assessment report, that the NERC basically highlighted that nearly every region of the United States is at increased risk of power outages, with the entire Western United States being at risk. And this is all in the report, with the NERC saying that due to electrification, the peak loads are rising at an alarming rate. And coinciding that with wind and solar, with the retirement of nuclear and coal, essentially spells disaster. So if this guy's highlighting it in his report, I would take that very seriously. Preparation is key because during the winters, that is no joke if the power goes out, or potentially even worse if the gas goes out. Pretty serious stuff. With the report providing charts highlighting that unplanned outages have been increasing in frequency, which of course can be extremely dangerous. I am definitely considering getting a power generator. Last but not least is number 10 saying that researchers will complete work on an inhalable C-19 vaccine that will sharply reduce transmission. And that was it. So that was the top 10 from Mr. Michael Semblak, JPMorgan Asset Management Executive. He signs off saying Happy New Year and that given the election, he thinks it's going to be a very long one. So a couple of surprises there. Of course, the big one is he thinks that old Joe is going to drop out, which he might, but hopefully he's wrong about those power outages and natural gas outages. Unfortunately, this gung-ho electrification could prove to be kind of dangerous, but hopefully people prepare accordingly. All right, guys, well, that's it for this one. Thanks for joining me. Please don't forget to smash the like, subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you in the next one.